This is the reality of our wildlife. Chicago, the third largest city in the United States, is a bustling urban environment. With over 9.5 million people in the metropolitan area, it has a significant impact on local wildlife. As the city expands, natural habitats are disrupted, posing challenges for the animals that call this region home. The south suburbs of Chicago are characterized by a mix of residential areas, commercial developments, and patches of forest. These suburbs play a crucial role in the lives of local wildlife, but they also contribute to habitat loss, fragmentation, and deforestation. How do we see these effects?
I have seen wildlife affected by Chicago and the south suburbs. For instance, the squirrels now eat out of the garbage instead of looking for food. They have easy access to all the trash that we throw away each week, to the point where they chew holes in the garbage cans to get the food. And they're not that afraid of us anymore. And we had a squirrel break into the house because the garbage had went out. So they was looking for food, so they came into the house.
Raccoons, opossums, and even coyotes are now common sights in Chicago's urban areas. These animals are foraging in parking lots and dumpsters. This new way of life brings its own set of dangers, as animals navigate busy streets and face threats from human activity. As forests are replaced by concrete and steel, and natural habitats are polluted, animals are forced into the urban landscape, seeking food and shelter wherever they can. These animals are incredibly adaptable. Raccoons, for example, are omnivores and can eat almost anything, which makes them particularly suited to urban environments where food is abundant in the form of garbage. Deforestation also plays a huge role in the threat cities and suburbs have on wildlife. So how does it affect wildlife?
The way that I most know that it works is it just kind of gets rid of like homes for certain animals like squirrels or birds or something. And the animal kingdom is kind of like a set of dominoes. If you take out one piece, the whole thing just starts falling apart.
Deforestation is a major concern. As new housing developments and commercial projects spring up, large swathes of forest are cleared. This loss of habitat is the greatest threat to wildlife, leading to decreased biodiversity and the displacement of numerous species. When forests are cleared, we lose not just trees but entire ecosystems. Animals that depend on these forests for food, shelter, and breeding grounds are displaced. This disruption has a domino effect on the entire ecosystem. Fragmentation is another significant issue. As forests are broken into smaller, isolated patches, the remaining habitats become insufficient to support certain species. This leads to a decline in population sizes and genetic diversity. Fragmentation not only reduces the amount of available habitat, but also creates edge effects, which alter the microenvironment of the remaining forest patches. This can affect everything from plant growth to the presence of predators and competitors. While cities like Chicago are essential for human activities, they can be designed in ways that minimize their impact on wildlife. Unfortunately, many developments prioritize economic benefits over ecological considerations, leading to greater habitat disruption. The lack of wildlife-friendly infrastructure worsens these issues. For instance, buildings and roads create barriers that hinder animal movement, leading to increased mortality and reduced access to resources. There are numerous ways to design buildings that coexist with wildlife. Green roofs, walls covered with vegetation, and wildlife corridors are just a few examples. Urban areas often lack green corridors that allow animals to travel safely between habitats. But why aren't there more eco-friendly structures?
So the problem with the infrastructure in Chicago is that there's rules in place to protect the wildlife. The only issue is that it's not the economically efficient strategy. Coming from a background where I've read prints, created prints, and made pseudo decisions on how things are built and made. When it comes down to it, in order to win the job, to actually be able to make the building, they look at the most cost-effective thing. And unfortunately, the way it is looking after the wildlife is not always the most economically efficient thing. And also on the job site, there's also people that are in charge of making sure that we're taking care of the environment. But sometimes in certain projects, it just doesn't go that way. Unfortunately, the only way to really improve this would be for there to be more of an emphasis on protecting the wildlife more than there already is. And until we get to that point and making the wildlife a more economic priority, it's going to be harder for those people who care about the wildlife making these jobs and stuff to win the case over someone else.
But there's still hope. Despite these challenges, there are efforts underway to protect and support wildlife in Chicago and its suburbs. Conservationists are working to preserve remaining green spaces and restore degraded habitats. Initiatives such as planting native vegetation, creating wildlife corridors, and implementing eco-friendly building practices are gaining traction. How can our communities help?
I think we should be better stewards over the land that God has given us. We can implement permaculture design so that we can live cohesively with animals, and it'll benefit both us and them.
Community involvement is also crucial. Simple actions like planting native gardens, reducing pesticide use, and supporting local conservation groups can make a big difference. While the challenges are significant, the efforts to protect and restore wildlife habitats in Chicago and its south suburbs offer hope. By combining sustainable urban planning, active conservation efforts, and community involvement, we can create a city where both people and wildlife thrive.